Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Archit Seshadri. Thanks for joining us. You're watching India Prime on WION, the only Indian channel that gets you a global perspective and brings you all the top stories from South Asia and around the world. On tonight's big discussion this Wednesday, we're analyzing airlines versus passengers and how you can avoid being pushed out of a plane when you have a valid ticket. A United Airlines passenger in Chicago this past Sunday was getting ready to head to Louisville, Kentucky. But before the flight could even take off, he was off the plane. It's a story that's now making headlines all around the world, and it's a video that's gone viral. Well, here's why. Ground staff dragged the Vietnamese-American passenger off that flight from Chicago because the airline had overbooked the flight, meaning the airline had issued more tickets than the flight could in fact accommodate. Passengers on board quickly whipped out their cell phones and captured the dramatic incident on camera. Well, let's take a listen into some reaction coming in to this dramatic story.
I hope this never happens again to anyone. And I will continue to fly United. I will continue to also check on other airlines as well. This was, I hope they come out with a better statement than they have so far.
I think the responsibility of the actual treatment of the man, the doctor, lies with the people who treated him that way.
It happened to a doctor. I mean, it can happen to anyone. I mean, it's a bit, concerning that actions like this will be taken for someone that was not wanting to volunteer. It's concerning.
Actually, I just got asked to volunteer to give up, but traveling with 2 kids, I said no. So I'm hoping it's a better situation today.
Yeah, quite the incident, certainly raising a lot of eyebrows. Well, the incident could have been local as well, but the issue is pretty much a global one. Well, we're trying to get this perspective to how this could affect you and your family. Well, here in India, it is something that is quite common. A factor in the fact that India is now headed for a holiday season. Well, this could mean that many flights are indeed overbooked, which means long lines at the airports, delays on flights, angry passengers. Well, you know how that combination works. So what exactly happens when the seat that you have, you're inside a plane, you're buckled in, reading that in-flight magazine, trying to get ready to that destination. You've in fact got your boarding card, you're all settled in, and then suddenly the airline comes and says, well, this is not your seat. Well, tonight on the show, we're going to be discussing this and sort of hopefully answer some of these questions. How much does an airline overbook? How does an airline decide that you are the chosen one to get deplaned? What are the rights that you as a passenger are entitled to? And what do you do when you're in a situation like this? Well, what governs situations like this as well? All of these questions, hopefully, in tonight's discussion on India Prime over the next 30 minutes. And to get perspective, we are joined by an esteemed panel of guests. We have Bijan Kumar Mishra, an international consumer policy expert here in Delhi. We also have Devashri Shekhar, an aviation expert, joining us from Gurugram in Delhi. And we have Harish Bajor, a brand expert, joining us from Bengaluru. Thank you all for joining us. First of all, my question to Mr. Mishra. Well, it is a common phenomenon for airlines to overbook. What does a passenger, someone who's on board, hopefully never dealing with what happened in Chicago, what is the flyer entitled to in such a situation? Your thoughts?
The flyer, first of all, is entitled for full compensation in terms of the damage caused or the inconvenience caused in terms of agony, and can really sue the airline to the extent that he gets a real fat kind of a compensation, and that's what the airline should be made to do. But more than that, you see, what is most essential is now all the passengers who fly United has to understand that it is time for some of the passengers to also demonstrate solidarity. They should stop flying on that airline. They should teach them a lesson till the airline doesn't agree that in future they will never repeat such an incident to happen, and they'll never let any passenger go through this, tormenting situation, and ensure that they're well looked after. You see, as you said, every overbooking is based on certain data and statistics.
Right, some sort of formula that the airlines have to do to make sure that their flights are full. But ultimately, who pays the price for all of that? I mean, what we saw really was dramatic.
No, but then this is not the way to close the deal. You see, like you need a certain seats which you need to sell at a premium because there is a urgency of certain passengers. When you earn that money, you should agree to share that with passengers who are not in a hurry to go and are prepared to take a compensation right on the spot and agree to travel later because they are not in an urgency to travel. So there is a kind of a negotiation which goes with the passengers. But passengers has to be given that value for the money which they would have bought the ticket in advance for. They might have bought a very cheaper ticket at an earlier date because they knew the schedule from before and they got that value. But if supposing the airline is earning more than what they would have earned in a normal sense, then they should be ready to share that with the passenger, but a willing passenger, not a passenger who is not willing to give away the seat. And this is ridiculous. You know what I just saw in the clipping. I mean, it's never heard of. I had never seen this before. And thank God, I only hope it doesn't happen in India.
Well, certainly we haven't seen anything like this in India, and hopefully things like this won't happen here as well. But let me now go to our next guest, Debashri Shekhar. You know, things like this certainly cause unrest among passengers. We see it, we hear about it, and many of us at some point, whether it's for leisure or for professional reasons, do get on flights and hope and pray that there's no turbulence. But this is something that most of us don't really think about, getting offloaded a flight. I mean, when you saw that video, what sort of went through your mind? Who was in the right, and what did you make of it? Debashri?
Hi, good evening. Well, you know what? Firstly, all airlines, they do the overbooking, and just the way it was explained that yes, we do the overbooking because you need to sell your seats. However, not at this cost, the way this gentleman was offloaded. There is a procedure for every airline, that's the way it's maintained, that we are expected to ask the customer firstly for a voluntary offload because of whatever the reason it could be. If there is no way that you can get a voluntary, then you finally go for an involuntary. But this is no way of getting an involuntary.
Debashri, let me also ask you a question.
Involuntary offload also.
Let me ask you a real question, a follow-up question to that. You certainly hit that. You know, you talked about that it's no way to get a passenger off a flight. Let's sort of get this into perspective, though. What are the airline's rights and what are the passengers' rights in a situation like this? Some people may be tempted with the offer of, you know, a hotel or another flight or maybe a cash voucher. This passenger may have said, no, I don't want all of those things. And still, the airline and the ground staff not only pulled but dragged literally this passenger off the flight. What are the airline's rights and what are the flyers' rights? Debashri?
See, the airlines, they have, depending from which part of the world they're flying in, so they are governed by different rules. So if it is an Indian carrier, any of our domestic carriers, they are governed by DGCA rules. If it's any of the European carriers, then they are governed by the EU rules. And if they are a US carrier, then they are governed by the DOT rules. That's the Department of Transport.
Right.
So the rules are different. However, the bottom line is the same. You are expected as an airline to approach the customer, request the customer, and the way you said, yes, depending on the, if you know, it's a holiday maker for them, some money for us, you know, staying back one night in a hotel and getting us some cash voucher, it's probably worth the entire trip. They will take that easily. Whereas someone like this gentleman, he's got a business meeting the next day. He will say, I'm sorry, you can pay me anything. I am not ready to go because I have my commitments, and that is a lot more than what I'm going to, you know, you're going to give me. You can't afford to pay me that. So you will not be able to touch such a customer. You have to leave them. But the way, so it varies from different carrier to carrier and which country the airlines is flying in and out from.
All right, let me go back to Bijan Mishra with regards to that same question. We sort of talked about it. It varies from airlines to what part of the world you are in. But United Airlines, the United States, taking certainly a lot of slack, receiving criticism. Many people have gone on social media really criticizing the airline and their response. Mr. Mishra, my question to you is, again, passengers, what right do they have when they're in a situation like this?
You see, the right of the passenger is to ensure that they get safety, they get quality, and they're assured of the value which has been promised when they have paid that money. And as a consumer right, there may be various laws in the various countries governing in terms of their rights. But one, law which is going across the world is human rights. You see, as a consumer, you have to be treated humanly. You cannot disregard the human right of a passenger by disrespecting the passenger and dragging the passenger in front of so many passengers when the passenger is claiming that he doesn't like to be offloaded and he's got an emergency at his destination. So he cannot be forced to be bodily thrown out of the aircraft. There has to be a willingness. There has to be a decency. There has to be respect. And we have to respect those human rights which are there. And as consumer, you have rights to 6 very fundamental rights. You know, the right to choose, the right to safety, right to quality, you see, right to information. You have to ensure that all these rights are well taken care. And you just cannot undermine any of these rights.
All right. Well, we'll continue the conversation in just a moment. But first, let's now take a look at some of the civil aviation rules across the world, specifically those that govern in instances where a passenger with a valid ticket can simply not be accommodated on a flight. Here's the report.
Let's glance at the civil aviation rules across the world. In India, an airline must first ask for volunteers to give up their seats in exchange of some benefits that the airline, at its own discretion, may wish to offer. If the boarding is involuntarily denied to passengers, the airline shall compensate them in addition to refund of air ticket. In America, airlines must provide tickets to passenger to their final destination within 1 hour. If the flyer gets delayed in reaching his destination, airline needs to compensate. If flyer reaches an hour late, the compensation is double the original one-way fare or is up to $675. If the flyer reaches 2 hours late or 4 hours in case of international flight, the compensation is 400% of the one-way fare or up to a limit of $1,350. In European Union, passengers are entitled to €250 to €600 compensation depending on the length of the flight, a refund of their ticket or a free flight home, free meals and hotel accommodation if required.
All right, let me continue the discussion. I'm going to now joined by Harish Bajor. He's joining us from Bengaluru with regards to this, a brand expert. Harish, let's talk about, how this affects an airline's reputation, its brand. United Airlines certainly getting a lot of heat, especially from the world of social media.
Well, firstly, I'm watching this entire case with great attention because I'm booked on a flight next week from SFO to Newark on United.
What airline? Oh, United. Okay. Interesting airline choice.
All the best. All the best.
To hell, that quite the reverse happens. So one is insulated, hopefully.
Right.
But speaking from the brand perspective, United has been a good airline. It hasn't had too many issues, more than normal issues. But this incident has actually painted it black. And we live in the day and age of social media. And this entire visual has gone viral. So if you really ask me, I think this is the wrong era for this kind of a thing to be happening. Because, you have hashtag boycott United going around now. You have people wondering whether I must look at a cancellation of my booking. But canceling a ticket in the United States is very difficult because you're going to lose $150 on every ticket that you cancel. But the point is future bookings are going to get affected. People are going to wonder what United is all about. So I don't think it's done anything to United except a complete heavy baggage of negativity which the brand carries.
Well, you certainly talked about the brand image, though. Do you think that this might die down after a couple of days? I mean, this is certainly a hot topic. People have seen that video. You've seen those reactions and, those boycott movements on social media. But will it die down, or will this, we saw some of the shares that were also impacted, or is this just a very temporary situation in terms of the brand United sort of suffering the brunt of it?
Public memory, proverbially and really, is short. And I think that's a fortunate thing for United. Just like the stock market memory is also equally short. So, but I think, this will continue for the next 2 to 5 weeks minimum. Depends how long it takes for media to keep it fanned, traditional media to keep it fanned, and of course, viral media, which is, of course, social media to keep it fanned. Then the next new issue will come by. But then I think, even 2 to 5 weeks is enough of a scar for brand United to carry. So I think it's a terrible thing to have happened to the brand.
All right, well, speaking of brand and social media, let's sort of look at some of those responses. There's been a whole host of tweets and Facebook comments regarding what happened with the United Airlines passenger. Well, it's certainly not easy for airlines, especially dealing with an era of social media where people are quickly to whip out their phone, captured on camera, upload that, and then tweet about it and put some sort of hashtag. Well, they have to also take into consideration some of the last-minute cancellations. So let's take a look at some of the tweets, the trolling incident specifically for United Airlines. All right, first of all, one tweet said, "Breaking, he just wanted to go home. Is that a crime, folks? Racism." So sort of talking about the race card, an Asian American being pulled off a flight. Why was it another passenger? Another tweet basically said that United Airlines' app in which customers have called the crew unprofessional. There were also some funny ones as well. Let's take a look at this next tweet. There was a picture with the United Airlines plane, which states, "We cannot beat our competitors, we beat our customers." So we'll just sort of leave it at that. There's another one with some notable brands. I'm sure you guys can read this. We don't need to talk about that. One company saying we're not the most hated company, and then there's a response alluding to United. So certainly evoking quite a bit of reaction on social media. Let me now go back to Debashri with regards to this. Debashri, people have really this has been a story that's not just in the United States. It's something that people all around the world have quickly reacted, and we live in a world of social media where we can quickly take a situation like this. Many of those passengers whipped out their phones, and if we can play that, you can hear them. You can hear them frustrated, shocked. I mean, those emotions, and then tweeting it out, going viral online. So how important is that for airlines to maybe sort of, they are being policed, they are being watched whether they like it or not? Debashri?
Well, you know what, looking at the expressions on the videos, it is really, it's going to take time for United to take it out of a customer's mind. It's going to take a while. It will be more than definitely 2 to 5 weeks. It's going to be a long way because it's easier to spread this, and people who witnessed it, it's going to be very difficult to take it off their mind. So United as an airlines will have to really work hard to erase this from a customer's mind. And for that, they have to really find their own policies. An ad wouldn't do that, but somewhere a humane attitude towards the customer. But at the moment, the way it is being pushed as an Asian way, all those thoughts has to be erased from a customer's mind.
Let me now go to Bijan, I'm sorry, with regard to this. Twitter, Facebook, I mean, you make a mistake, it takes seconds to get online. There's not a whole lot of time to wait. I mean, some of them are actually a little funny, and we laugh about the one about if you can't beat our competitors, we'll beat our customers. I mean, it's that. I mean, it's funny, but it's somewhat true.
Very original. It's
right.
original.
Right.
It brings out the the feeling of the passenger.
Right.
And what one has to be very careful is that I also don't agree that it's not going to be lasting. There would definitely be a very severe wound inflicted on United for this, because the citizens today call the shots.
Right.
The customer is the king.
Right.
And what we all have to understand, that if you don't treat the customer well, you got to get it one day when you really make a mistake. Nobody wants to pardon you. And that is where we feel very happy with the social media these days, because it has a kind of a prompt response.
Right.
You get a prompt feedback, from the citizens, from the customers. And that prompt feedback is actually a huge amount of resource for the competitors. And you've got to understand that.
And people are not going to waste time getting those memes ready. Well, in fact, I'm actually going to one of our correspondents, Digvijay Singh Deo. He, in fact, has taken a United flight. He was actually taking a flight last year. And unfortunately, unlike Harish, I know you're about to take a flight in the coming months, you said. Well, Digvijay, you've taken a flight, and you were, in fact, offloaded. So you've been in a situation similar to this. Hopefully, you weren't dragged off the flight. And if you were, we would have seen it on Twitter and social media. So I'm assuming that you were okay with that. But how did you handle that? As a passenger, I understand you were, in fact, on your way to interview Usain Bolt, but pulled off that flight. Walk us through that.
Yes, absolutely humiliating experience in a sense if you're a passenger, Archit, because as you said, I was off to interview Usain Bolt ahead of the Olympics last year. I remember it was in March, and my video journalist and I, we were headed to New York, and we had a connecting flight from there to Montego Bay. And we actually checked in well in advance. We were in fact given our boarding passes as well because of some, scheduling issues. I was in economy, my video journalist was in business class. And as we approached immigration, we got a call on our cell phones saying that we have been offloaded simply because we didn't have a valid visa. Now, the funny thing here was that my video journalist had a journalist visa while I had a 10-year valid visa. And this is what we spoke to the officials there and said, listen, we have valid visas. We've actually traveled to the US within the last year and we're only connecting via New York. So why are you taking us off? But they said, nothing doing, sorry, no questions asked, you're off. At that point of time, you have no option. You know, you call up office and you figure out, is there another flight you can take? Because that interview took me about 7 or 8 years to line up. Didn't happen. But the worrying part was after that. After we were offloaded, we had to wait in the airport till 4 in the morning. The flight took off at 10:30 because there was no one from the airlines to sign us out of the airport. In Delhi, it's very categorical. Once you've entered the airport, if any case you missed a flight or anything has happened, you need to be escorted out by an airlines official. That didn't happen. We kept waiting till 4 a.m., called everyone we knew, didn't work out.
All right, let me now go to Harish real quick. You know, Harish, we have a few minutes, so I want to sort of throw this question out to you. The way the CEO responded to all of this, you know, they came out with one response. It seemed like that response was not acceptable. Then there was another response followed by another. So from a United's standpoint, it seems like they really had to come out and issue some sort of statement to sort of perhaps appease the public, it seems like. What do you make of that back and forth about the way the airline handled the incident instead of flat out coming and saying, we may have made a mistake? Harish?
Yes, I think, you know, one of the biggest problems with brands is that brands are not humble anymore. I think humility is a great aspect for you to actually explore.
Right.
I would have loved it if the United CEO had come out and said, we made a mistake, we are sorry, we are like human beings, we are also human beings who run this airline, and I think we made a mistake. I think that was missing. I think what United can do now to recoup is very quickly publish a white paper on this entire incident, come out publicly and apologize for what happened, and assure everybody with some degree of integrity, this will not happen again.
All right, and let me go to Devashri real quick. Devashri, you know, a lot of people in Chicago where this passenger was taken off that flight, dragged off the flight, let me clarify. The Asian American community have sort of been frustrated, saying this was a racial profiling, that this passenger, this Vietnamese American, was pulled out because of his identity. And it sort of sparked a debate about racial tensions, which have continued to plague the United States. How much do you think that perhaps played a role in this passenger specifically being pulled out of the flight, at least in your opinion? Devashri?
It is definitely going to play a role in the minds of the people, because the way at the moment it is with the racial bit, and so it's in Asian, so why have they not pulled out anyone else but an Asian gentleman off the flight? So it will definitely have an effect in the minds of the people.
All right, and we are now going to wrap this up. I'm going to ask each of our guests 3 quick words to summarize this incident, the dragging incident with the United Airlines passenger. We've talked about race, we've talked about passenger rights, airline rights, and how it works both across India and around the world. Let me start with our guest here in the studio, Mr. Mishra. 3 words to sort of summarize this in your thoughts.
Non-discriminatory. It has to be very transparent. And it has to be to the entire delight of the customer who has paid the money.
All right, let's go to Diggy. Diggy, 3 words to summarize what happened with this incident.
If I've paid, I deserve to be on that flight. Simple as that.
Deserve to be on the flight. All right, Devashri, ma'am, let's go to you. 3 words to sum it up.
Well, it is an appalling incident, and it is a learning for other airlines. And of course, every customer needs to be treated as a human being.
And Harish Bijor, your thoughts, 3 words, final words.
Well, what I tweeted, hashtag crazy, hashtag never again, and hashtag not done.
And we certainly wish you and many of our viewers who perhaps may be taking United or other airlines a safe journey. And hopefully this is a lesson learned not only for United but many other airlines. At this point, I do want to thank all of our guests, Bijan Kumar Mishra, Devashri Sekar, Harish Bijor, as well as Diggy, our correspondent and sports editor from WION, for your perspectives and thoughts. Thank you again. We hopefully were able to break down these points on rules for airlines and passengers. I'm Archit Seshadri. Thanks for watching India Prime. Have a good night.